Hello, Internet! Sorry for the jump scare. If you're unfamiliar with Smash, this will make sense in a second, I promise. So let's start with the basics. What is Smash? Part 1. What is Smash? Okay, so Smash is a musical TV show that premiered on NBC February 6th, 2012. It was created by Theresa Rebeck, a playwright, developed by Robert Greenblatt, and it was executive produced by Steven Spielberg? This will only become stranger the more I talk about it. Anyway, what is the show about? It centers the production team of a Marilyn Monroe themed musical called Bombshell, thus the costume. And the central conflict is who will get to play Marilyn? Will it be ingenue and newcomer Karen Cartwright, played by Katharine McPhee? Or will it be longtime Broadway chorus girl yearning for a chance at stardom, Ivy Lynn, played by Megan Hilty? In season 2, the focus shifts slightly. A new musical called Hit List comes to town, and Bombshell has just made it to Broadway. The conflict then becomes who will dominate the upcoming Tony season. This is a very, very brief summary. This is a very much soap opera type thingy, so every single character gets their own plot lines of unnecessarily convoluted dramas. Like, I'm not gonna say that I'm very good at summarizing things, I'm not. But my first summary of this 20-hour show had 120 pages. Like, it's very hard to tell what inconsequential line will become super important 3 episodes later, or what seemingly important thing will be unceremoniously dropped. Now, a little about my personal experience with the show. I first watched it when it was airing in 2012, and I became completely fascinated by it. Like, some numbers just struck a bizarre chord with me, so much so that ever since, every few months I'll sit down and watch like a dozen clips from the show. Some of my favorite songs, some of my favorite covers, and a fun fact, this show introduced me to like some of my favorite songs, period. Right now you must be thinking, wow, she must really love this show. And no, not really. It's actually kind of bad. And look, if there are any fans of Smash watching this, are there fans of Smash? Anyway, if there are fans of Smash watching this, I'm not the only one who feels this way, okay? Critics really loved the first episode of Smash, but critical and viewer reception soured as the season went on. LOL. LOL, LOL. More on that later. And yeah, I totally get why that happened. There are some storylines in this show and some performances that make me want to put my head through a wall. So why, God, why am I still thinking about it over 10 years later? I'm not gonna lie, I'm doing this video in part to try and figure that out. I think ultimately it comes down to potential. There are some elements in the show that are just so damn good that they give me chills, and some of the problems have such easy fixes that it pains me that no one thought to fix them. Before we do the usual deep dive, I just need to preface something. I'm not an expert in any of this, okay? I do have a little experience with theater acting. I was in theater classes for over 10 years. I do have a little experience singing. I was in a couple bands and I've always loved to sing. And I've watched quite a few bootlegs. I mean, I totally paid hundreds of dollars each time, even though I'm Brazilian and that would be insanely expensive for me to do. But I'm not particularly great at or knowledgeable about any of these things. So if I think someone did a bad job, it doesn't mean that I'm definitely right or that I could personally do a better job. And there are some elements featured here that I just don't know jack shit about. For example, how does the production of a Broadway musical actually work? No idea. How far in advance are actors cast for shows like this? Yeah. So if I think something is kind of weird and it's actually completely normal, be patient with me, please. Alright, with all of that said, let's talk about Smash. Starting with the plot and characters. Part 2, plot and characters. Just a little warning, the character journeys vary a lot from season 1 to season 2. I wonder why. Foreshadowing. Because of that, I'll cover everyone's parts in season 1 and then move on to season 2. Season 1. Tom Levitt. Played by Christian Borle, Tom is the composer for Bombshell, and he's also part of the in-universe well-established writing duo Houston and Levitt. First thing we learn about Tom is that he is, to cite Mike's Mike, gay, 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 gay. So, of course, during his first scene when he's talking to his partner Julia Houston, he has to stop and check out his new assistant's butt. Yeah. His assistant is called Alice, by the way. He ends up mattering. I wish he didn't. And in the scene, we also learn about some director named Derek Wills, who Tom hates. One of his main character traits for this season is being a very good friend. Wow, such a novel concept for a gay man on TV. His best friends are his partner Julia and none other than Maryland contender Ivy Lynn. Despite what I said, he is actually a very good friend. He deals with things such as Julia's affair and Ivy's health issues very well. He is always there to offer them kindness and good advice when needed. Yeah, good friend. Good job done. He is also the first person to react appropriately to the fact that Derek, the director of the show, and Ivy are sleeping together. Like, he thinks it's weird, it's a clear conflict of interest, and it's also possibly an abuse of power on Derek's part. Because it is. I also really enjoy his rapport with Ivy. Their scenes together are often really fun. I just enjoy watching them have fun together. Okay, Marina, he's a good friend. What else? Not much, to be honest. Like, he dislikes Derek, and so do I. We have that in common. He even yells,
"He is a terrible human being!"
about how he doesn't want to work with Derek. And like years later, remembering barely anything from this show, one thing I was sure happened was Tom yelling, "He's a terrible human being." Maybe I related somehow. We find out later that the reason they hate each other is because years ago they worked on a show together, and afterwards Derek went around bad mouthing Tom to a bunch of theaters. Nah, I didn't need a reason for them to hate each other. Derek just really sucks. In the end, Tom's arc in season 1 is all about him trying to change his men-slut ways and find love. Because that's what the gays do, right? They sleep with men. I mean, if that's what you like, what else are you gonna do with your life? At the beginning of the season, he's dating this lawyer his mother set him up with, and a theme in their relationship is that whenever they try to do anything together, Tom gets a call and has to leave. Seriously, that happens like 3 or 4 times during the season. You know, aside from that, they're cute. Then something happens that zaps all my investment away from this. There's this character I haven't mentioned yet. He's called Sam. He's another friend of Ivy's, and he's also a dancer in Bombshell. Sam walks directly up to Tom and tries to talk to him about sports.
Sam, sports are anathema to me.
Okay. Bye, lawyer man. I liked you. It might seem like I'm exaggerating, but in this kind of show, when two characters have like a random and pointless interaction like that, you just know they're gonna get together. He and Sam get closer as a result of Ivy falling deeper and deeper into a self-destructive hole. Which is sad, but like, it's sweet that they are joined in their mutual worry for a friend. When Tom and the lawyer finally break up, Sam and Tom get a lot more flirty, and even from their first date, you can tell that their chemistry is way better than Tom's with the lawyer guy. And I also really like Sam's actor. He is very charming, and he's a really good singer. I wish they gave him more screen time. If you're anything like me, you're listening to this and you're thinking, does Tom have any flaws? Like, at all? And the answer to that is, kinda. By the end of the season, because of some convoluted bullshit, Julia's side piece is brought on to Bombshell with Tom's blessing. At first, he doesn't want to tell Julia anything, so of course, when she finds out, she is pissed because not only is he back, Tom endorsed it. And this is supposed to be his flaw. He coddles his friends and never wants to be the bearer of bad news. Unfortunately, the only other example we see of this is that one time Tom ditched a Republican fundraiser to go look for his friend Ivy, who had just been fired and was wandering the streets of New York drunk and alone. Call me a monster, but I don't think he was wrong to do that. So, what was the point of all that? Did Tom learn anything? Did he grow? I mean, barely. I guess he changed his man-slut ways, but that was never a struggle. Alright, Marina, you might say. Everything sucks, but how would you do it? Oh, I'll tell you. First, I would X the stuff with the lawyer. I would have Tom and Sam meet as soon as Bombshell rehearsal started. Tom would blow Sam off in like a genuinely rude way, only to then find out he's also Ivy's friend. Whoops. He would take a little while to realize Sam is even gay, like in the show. And like that, the audience might guess they'll get together, but at least there is no filler relationship that they can't get invested in. Also, I think we should see Tom sleeping around a little bit. Sam might even like judge him for it. Because the show tells us that this is the kind of guy Tom is, but since we don't see it, we never really buy it. Him being in relationships doesn't really feel like a struggle for him because he is only ever in committed relationships during the course of the series. Finally, I think his friendships could stay pretty much the same, maybe just add in a couple more instances of him babying his friends before the finale. See? This is what I mean. Easy fixes that could make his plot lines that much more tolerable. Speaking of intolerable plotlines, Julia Houston. Oh, Julia. This character, oh my f***ing god. No shade to Deborah Messing, the actress, but Julia gets way too much focus and all her plotlines are terrible. The first one is the adoption stuff. Ugh. At the beginning of the season, she's taking a year off work to adopt a kid with her husband, Frank. Kind of weird, but okay. One day, Julie is hanging out at Tom's place, and his assistant Alice makes an offhand comment that a musical about Marilyn Monroe would be really cool. And it clearly strikes a chord with Julia, but whenever her annoying ass husband catches a whiff of her working on the project, he starts nagging her because, what about the baby? What about the baby, Frank? Don't most people who adopt have jobs? Oh, and we need to talk about Leo, their biological kid. Because this performance, it's just trash, okay? Like, this was the actor's first major project, so he was still getting the hang of it, I guess. But it's nearly unwatchable. Like, he delivers all of his lines the exact same way. He barely ever changes tone or facial expression. I don't think I can even quite convey how painful it is anytime he's on screen.
Mom, we've been talking about this forever.
But it's not just his performance. Another reason I can't get into this plotline is that both Frank and Leo are written super inconsistently. At first, they're dogpiling on Julia because she has the audacity to consider working. But at the vaguest sign of difficulty, they're ready to give up. Like, difficulties are completely unforeseen. Guys, isn't adoption like a famously lengthy and difficult process? Then there's Michael. From the second he's introduced, it's obvious that he and Julia used to be a thing. So of course he's gonna get hired into Bombshell because we need drama. He and Julia have dinner once to discuss some character stuff because he's playing Joe DiMaggio, and he promptly becomes obsessed with her. That's the dream, huh, ladies? Like, essentially, he blackmails her into getting with him again, because otherwise he's gonna reveal their previous affair to her husband. Jesus! Like, in the end, they frame it as a mutual attraction, but this is disgusting, right? And it's supposed to be romantic. But 2012, man. Those were other times. Understandably, Julia never seems happy around him. But this, along with the blackmail stuff, completely keeps me from enjoying them as a couple. If you're gonna have an affair with someone, at least make it someone who brings you joy. But no, we get miserable, stressed Julia. They do break up eventually, and Michael is fired at Tom's insistence. God bless you, Tom. And despite this, things seem to be amicable. So it looks like Julie is gonna get away with it. That is, until the last mention of the adoption storyline. Frank's looking for some documents on Julia's bedside table for adoption stuff when he finds lyrics to a song she wrote detailing the affair. Are you kidding me? How dumb do you have to be to leave that shit right next to where your husband sleeps? Frank gets pissed and leaves, obviously, and Neo, it's the Matrix now. Frank gets pissed and leaves, obviously, and Leo is nowhere nearly as mad at his mom as he should be. But, I'm not too mad about it, because the less I get of this cardboard cutout pretending to be a human, the better. She and Frank start getting closer again soon after, though. He likes that she doesn't shy away from admitting that it was all her fault. Like, she states firmly and repeatedly that it's all her fault. Frank's kind of a weird dude, huh? I don't know, I feel like this would only make me more upset. Like, yeah, I know it's all your fault. This isn't helping. Anyway, they get back together again. Yay. This whole plotline is just exhausting. It's like being at a party with people you don't particularly like, explaining their interpersonal drama to you. You just want to get some more beer and go home. At the end of the season, there's some more drama because Michael is back to the show, but Frank and Leo are weirdly supportive of Julia and hardly seem to mind it. So nothing mattered. Great. The last bit of drama with Julia this season is that thing with Tom when he allowed the crew to bring back Michael. But then they go to church and God heals their friendship. That is only partially a joke. So that didn't matter either. Great. Side note, but Julia is a terrible friend. Like, she slacks off on work multiple times this season due to family drama and leaves Tom to pick up the slack. Yeah, that action will have consequences. So, what would I change here? Is everything a valid answer? Fine. I'll be charitable. Some of it can stay. Firstly, I would have the season begin with Julia and her husband estranged. Maybe he even took the kid, so I don't have to suffer through his terrible acting. In my version, that's why Julia is so into the Marilyn Project. She's trying to distract herself from her crumbling personal life. Early on, they bring Michael into the project, and Julia is okay with that. He might even try to seduce her, but she says she isn't into it. And he respects it, because in my version, he's not a creep. Soon after, Frank shows up, trying to reconcile, and Julia panics. She starts trying to push Michael out of the show. And the audience is a bit confused, like, why is she doing that? Just because that guy hit on her? Anyway, she gets her way, Michael is fired, and we see her and Frank slowly rekindle their marriage. Then at the finale, Michael's replacement bails on a very short notice, and they have to bring him back in. Frank finds out, and he is pissed. Because, surprise, the affair happened before the series started. And not only did Julia hire him while they were apart, but she also lied about it. Frank bails, and since we watched them for the majority of the season working on their marriage, this now has weight. We feel it as an audience. These changes give Julia a clear arc about honesty. Her marriage initially fell apart because she couldn't just be honest about her lust for Michael. And now again, because she couldn't just admit that he was hired for Bombshell. To me, this is a clear improvement.
Eileen Rand.
Okay, how are we, everybody? I had to follow the last section with a little positivity, and that's Eileen, played by the iconic Angelica Houston. I effing love Eileen, okay? That's my girl right there. We're introduced to her in a divorce meeting with her ex and former business partner, Jerry. They're both Broadway producers, and we find out that Jerry is the one with the money in the relationship. In the scene, we also find out that despite that, he doesn't want Eileen to keep a single penny.
When the people have no more to eat, they will eat the rich.
We also find out something very important. Eileen is the queen of one-liners. He calls her childish, and she replies,
"Screwing every blonde who opens her legs for you is also childish." I guess that makes both of us children.
incredible. She also throws drinks in his face at every opportunity, and I think that's beautiful. Soon after Julia and Tom start working on the first few songs for the project, one of them gets leaked online. Eileen is immediately interested, and she quickly rushes the project to become a full-on workshop. She's also the one who brings in Demon Derek to direct. The two of them are friends, and despite hating Derek, I normally really enjoy their scenes together. They are two of the better actors in the show, they have great chemistry, and Derek is also the first person to realize that Eileen is trying to prove herself through this project. She wants to prove to everybody that she can do her job perfectly well without Jerry. Just one problem. Since the divorce is in progress, all of her assets are frozen. Yeah, and she doesn't have a rich daddy to bail her out like Jerry. Doesn't help that most of her investors are sexist assholes who don't feel safe investing with her if Jerry isn't involved. So she needs money. With that in mind, she decides to try and sell this Degas painting to Nick Jonas. Yeah, that's right. Nick Jonas was very randomly in this show. His character is called Lyle, and he was a Broadway child star who just so happens to be super rich and famous now. And Derek is throwing him a birthday party, so Eileen thinks, why not and try and sell him the painting? That's kind of weird. I didn't think it would work, but it actually does. And with that money, Bombshell can move forward. Oh, also, Jerry buys Eileen's assistant a Porsche, so he will quit his job with her. The rich truly have too little to do.
Eat the rich.
And because of that, Alice, who is Tom's assistant, begins helping Eileen out with one thing or another. And Alice, he's ambitious, sure. He's also a little rat. He's always like spying on people, trying to gather information. And since he senses power emanating from Eileen, he tries to get in her good graces. You see, it's kind of rat behavior. He even helps Eileen find an apartment she can afford. During such activities, he takes her to this cheap bar that has really good martinis and becomes Eileen's favorite new spot. There she meets someone interesting. Nick. Nick is the owner, and he and Eileen have amazing chemistry. Seriously, it's kind of impressive. I like that the show doesn't shove Eileen into that sexless businesswoman box, even though the actress is a little older, which, you know, for 2010s TV, impressive.
Let's go, girls.
They start to talk because Nick helps her out with this problem they had in the Bombshell rehearsal space. And it works, just not in time. The critics end up having to watch half the play in the blistering heat. And that leads to the sad conclusion, no one wants to invest yet. Around here, Alice drops Tom out of nowhere and starts working for Eileen. The little rat wants to be a producer now or something. Yeah. Now they need a new draw for investors. Eileen elects that they should bring in a movie star to play Marilyn. And Ellis actually helps here. He sleeps with the assistant of this movie star, Rebecca Duvall. Classic evil bisexual move. And Rebecca Duvall is played by Uma Thurman.
What?
Even then, the new investors are hesitant. So Nick suggests that Eileen talk to this musician friend of his called Cobra. I think his name's Cobra. And then, anyway, the guy implies that his money doesn't come from entirely legal sources, so Alice has to look into him. And the little rat not only does that, he looks into Nick, and turns out that Nick is also involved in unspecified dodgy stuff. It's Nick though, they look so sweet together, like, he's a criminal but he's my criminal, you know? Eileen obviously feels the same way I do because she accepts the money and decides to date Nick officially. She even sets the contracts of the other investors on fire to celebrate. So much drama. I love Eileen. There's trouble in the show though. Turns out that Rebecca Duvall is kinda bad. Alice in particular is really invested on Ivy becoming Marilyn, so he starts a scheme. He is in charge of Rebecca's smoothies, and he knows that she's allergic to peanuts, so he poisons her. Yeah, I bet you didn't expect a tempted M-word to show up here. And he straight up confesses to Eileen because he thinks that's gonna impress her so much that she'll give the part to the person he prefers, Ivy. But my guy, why would she be impressed? He's obviously fired and swears revenge. Immediately I'm thinking, damn, Nick! He knows all about Nick. He's obviously gonna leak that information. Overall, I like this story. I think Eileen letting go of her comfortable life with Jerry and finding love somewhere new, somewhere unexpected is really sweet. And I also like that there are points that she struggles not to do things the way Jerry would, which is a nice counterpoint on her journey of self-discovery. In other words, my bestie did nothing wrong. Her storyline stays as is. Derek Wills. Derek. Oh, Derek. You truly are the salt of the earth.
I meant scum of the earth.
Thanks.
This microwaved beer of a man is Bombshell's British director, Derek. And my beef truly isn't with Jack Davenport, the actor. Like I said, he's one of the better actors in the show. It's with the way the character is written. For a change of pace, I'll just list things about Derek that annoy me. Don't worry, that will basically tell you everything he does this season. We're introduced to him when Eileen goes to see if he's interested in the project. He doesn't want to work with Tom, and he doesn't want to audition, so he says,
For me to audition, Marilyn herself would have to pop out of that envelope and do me right here.
wow, you're so funny. Asshole. Anyway, he obviously changes his tune and auditions. Still in the first episode, this pathetic ass calls Karen to his house in the middle of the night. He asks her a series of creepy and extremely inappropriate questions, indicating that he wants her to sleep with him. Look, this is hardcore harassment. There is no way around it. Remember that for later. Later, Ivy is reading a scene from the show for him, and Derek randomly starts trying to seduce her too. Get off my Ivy, you demon! Regrettably, they f. And the next time the creative team is discussing who should play Marilyn, he's talking super fondly about Ivy when previously he wanted to cast Karen. Huh. I wonder what changed. Weirdly enough, I kinda like his scenes with Ivy. I really like their romantic chemistry, and Jack Davenport assumes this really tender tone when he talks to her, managing to be genuinely charming. And then he blows it. At the party he himself invites Ivy to, Ivy sees Derek grabbing some girl's ass. When she confronts him about it, he says it's a normal part of getting investments. Bro, I would say that can go horribly wrong for you. Not a safe strategy. And it's another fun thing to remember for later. After that, it only gets weirder and more abusive between them. He starts to either ignore her or humiliate her at work. And, he just doesn't care about her. At one point, she's tripping balls on medication, and he still presses her to rehearse, leveling the threat of replacing her with Karen. That's just fine. Let's keep going. The workshop flops, as we discussed, so Eileen asks Derek to create a new vision for the show. The song is called Touch Me, and it's kind of dumb. It's really tacky. It's this kind of Euro poppy techno thingy, and I just don't like it. Like, the montage is kind of cool. There are faceless dancers trying to grab at the Marilyn character, but the lyrics are so empty. And they have the audacity to say they were trying to create music for a new generation. Guys, I can tell this is tacky. I'm not even the youngs anymore. This is the moment I mentioned when Derek and Tom talk about their backstory. And here's the thing that I did not mention in Tom's part. Derek has the audacity to say that gay men can't possibly be oppressed because they own Broadway. If anyone needs a reminder on why the theater has historically been a very queer space, here's a summary. For a good long while, it wasn't seen as proper for women to act in the theater. So when a straight relationship was depicted, the woman in question was played by a man in drag. Very appealing job if you happen to be a queer person in a time when being gay or trans wasn't super well seen. That's why the gays are very present in the theater. Derek, it's not because they're secretly super powerful, it's because for a good long while, they had nowhere else to go. Which brings us to my second tangent from this scene. Derek says that Tom doesn't understand Marilyn because she was an sex symbol and he's gay. Sure. My point is, Derek is the one who doesn't freaking understand Marilyn. I'm not a Marilyn Monroe scholar or anything, but I did read a couple books on her in preparation for this video. Whenever she discusses sex in respects to her personal life, she seems almost disinterested in it. So much so that when I posted about doing research on her for this video, someone replied to me saying that she was an asexual icon. And I'm not here to discuss if that's how she would have identified, but reading her stuff, it's definitely a possibility. Besides, towards the end of her career, she wanted to be recognized as more than that. She wanted to be seen as a great actress, as a complex person. Sadly, her success with that was very limited, which seemed to weigh very heavily on her. That's why it makes me really uncomfortable to watch Derek repeatedly focus on that aspect of her. I mean, she was that, yes, but I doubt she would have wanted her legacy to be so simplistic. Okay, it's out of my chest now. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Ivy is eventually placed in the chorus. We'll get there. And Derek spends the rest of the season being his Liz. During tech rehearsals, he offhandedly tells Ivy that he loves her, and hours later goes to sleep with Rebecca. Guys, he only accepted this job so he could fulfill his extremely specific fetish of sleeping with Marilyn Monroe. Don't look at me. And of course, Ivy sees it happen. She later confronts Derek about it, and he justifies himself by saying that Rebecca needed his attention. Yeah, that explains everything. What a lame excuse, are you joking? Finally, Rebecca gets poisoned, and then they have to decide who is going to play Marilyn in her place. Karen, the understudy, who is still untrained, or Ivy, who already knows the part by heart. I wonder if there's a clearer choice here. Derek goes with Karen. This is so annoying, dude. She's not your muse. She just refused to sleep with you, and now you're obsessed with her. The last we see of him this season is during the play, telling Karen that she's a star, and that, by the way, he does understand love, because he loves her. Guy, come over here. Come over here. No, you don't! You just fetishize her as some untouched virgin, you creep. Okay, so, what to do about Derek? In my opinion, pick a lane. Either he's a flawed love interest or a villain. If you wanted to go the love interest route, you'd have to cut the creepy antics. Like, it's okay if he's a philandering jerk, but he stops being damaged in a sexy way the moment he abuses his position to sleep with actresses. Now my favorite, the villain route. For this one I have an extremely easy fix. Cut down on Elsa's part and make Derek the one to poison Rebecca. He's already sleeping with her, he has the opportunity, and then he could even pin it on Alice if you want to keep him in the story. That would be such a good twist. It would solidify that Derek isn't just your garden variety creep. He genuinely doesn't see the women he sleeps with as anything more than pawns. Ivy and Karen could find out and be horrified, like Karen especially since he did it for her. And now Karen could make the morally dubious decision of still taking the part. And later when he says that he understands love, instead of failing to be romantic, it would take a sinister tone. Like, oh, that psychopath is into her now. Among its many failures, the show's failure to make Derek a villain might be the most disappointing to me. This is my son, Urso. He's clearly not happy to be here, as you can tell. Go. Go, baby. Then my dress is full of black fur for the rest of the video. Karen Cartwright. Alright, so you guys already know that I'm Team Ivy. But Karen, played by Katharine McPhee, she's not bad per se. But there are two things about her that annoy me. First, she's just kind of boring. Like, as far as the show is concerned, she's never wrong. But I disagree. Because, second, she is ridiculously entitled. Like, I know that calling people Karens is outdated, but it's her name. It's right there. But the show really wants us to like Karen. It even begins in her perspective. She's singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow on a stage. And then suddenly the song is interrupted by a ringtone. And we realize that she's actually in an audition. The person conducting the audition has to take the call, so she thanks Karen for her time, ending it. Karen, in turn, gets ridiculously offended by this, and she leaves, slamming the door. See what I mean? Entitled. Like, even I know that attitude wouldn't help. Risking a controversial opinion, I don't really like Katharine McPhee in this. She's supposed to be this timeless staple, the ingenue, fresh off the bus from Nowheresville with white eyes and big dreams. But this is a grown-ass woman. Like, I never buy her as innocent. There is this very adult, secure confidence to her performance. There is no vulnerability there. Also, if you know this archetype, you just know everything there is to know about her. She has a clean-cut boyfriend with a respectable job. She's working part-time as a waitress, trying to find her big break. And her parents are well-meaning, but don't get her. Yes, it is that cliché. Some exceptions apply though. For example, the clean-cut boyfriend is Dev Sundaram. He is an Englishman from an Indian family, which is nice. I like that the clean-cut boyfriend isn't white. And a random detail, but I think her dad's face is weird. I try not to be that unkind, but something is up with this actor, man. He just looks unamused, shocked, disgusted, and kind of constipated all at once, constantly. Another theme with Karen is her aversion to sex appeal. She's always talking about not being able to do sex, and I think we're supposed to interpret that as her respecting herself too much to be objectified. This is such 2012 feminism. Like, it's so shallow, especially since Karen is always judging other women for embracing their sexuality. As to how I feel about this subject, look, I'm here dressed as Marilyn Monroe. I clearly have nothing against people trying to look hot. As to self-objectification and if it's even a thing, it's a massive subject. I'm not gonna get into that today, but just to make how I feel clear, I don't think women should be policing themselves to try and keep men from liking their appearances. That's all I'm gonna say today. As for her actual plot lines, she obviously auditions for Marilyn early on. She sings Beautiful by Christina Aguilera, and she kills it.
When the sun is shining through, then the clouds won't stay.
One thing I'll say in her favor is that she delivers on the pop covers, okay? Like, she has that kind of super polished voice that really fits well with modern pop music. And another thing that I like about her is that she conveys like the sheer joy of singing incredibly well, which as a person who loves to sing obviously appeals to me. And of course she gets a callback because this is a TV show. The real highlight of the first episode though is Derek's not booty call to Karen. She arrives at his house and he asks the aforementioned creepy questions and she almost leaves. But she decides to stay and convince him that she can, in fact, be sexy enough to play Marilyn. And she sings happy birthday to him, wearing only a dress shirt. Ew. You don't need to convince him of anything. Not alone with him in his house in the middle of the night, you don't. Early on in the season, we realized that the musical is going to be a problem for her boyfriend. Even though she didn't get the lead, she's part of the chorus, and as that, she will have to spend a lot of time doing this thing that doesn't pay super well. And it's clear that Dev takes his own career in politics much more seriously than he takes hers. If you haven't noticed, Dev kind of sucks. Another thing we realized early on is that they shoehorn in a lot of pop covers for her to sing. Which, like, I think she's great at them, so I don't mind that much, but come on. Did we need to watch her, like, perform a random pop song at a bar mitzvah? Get on with the plot, show! Despite her great voice, Karen doesn't have an easy time at rehearsals at first. Ivy frequently needles her, and since Ivy has been in the industry a long time, most of the chorus people in Bombshell are her friends, and thus the chorus is overwhelmingly anti-Karen. And besides that, there is the issue of her being very loud in the chorus at first. And because of that, she gets sidelined in a couple numbers. Remember that entitlement I was talking about? Yeah, after she's sidelined the second time, she immediately heads out of rehearsal, slamming doors. Girl, you're not 16 anymore. Like, that's your job. She also picks up a fight with this colleague of hers, and in that scene she says, "I'm the same as you, meh." Karen, this girl has 10 years of Broadway experience. You and her are not the same. Jesus. And she also has to assert her superiority because she got harassed by Derek first. Yeah? So what, Karen? God, she's annoying. For some reason I definitely don't understand. This makes the rest of the chorus people take pity on her, and so they teach her how to tone it down a little bit. Therefore, she does better at rehearsals from then on. Another storyline of Karen's this season is the stuff with her boyfriend. He is working with this colleague of his, RJ, to take down a political rival. And the first time Karen sees RJ, she's already jealous of her. Which to me is an instance of writer clairvoyance. Like, at this point, Karen has no reason to be jealous of RJ. But as the season goes on, her boyfriend hides all of the ups and downs of his career from her, but shares it all with RJ. So, Karen is completely justified. See, she's never wrong. The show never allows her to do something objectively wrong. The next big Karen plotline has to do with Rebecca. So Rebecca is a movie star, and Karen is pretty starstruck with her. And since Karen is the understudy, Rebecca one day decides to take her out and investigate the competition. And in that outing, Karen sings a song so amazing that Rebecca becomes a huge fan of hers. She actually decides to try and propel Karen's career. To help her with that, they hang out a lot after that. So much so that the paparazzi assume that they must be a couple. Dev is pissed. Like, to me, this makes no sense. Okay, I'm polyamorous, so I deal with jealousy fairly well, but what is there to be jealous about? Like, I get being kind of upset if the people think that someone else is dating your girlfriend, but the paparazzi largely don't know who Karen is at first. So, what's the issue? I mean, he knows she isn't bi. This pointless antagonism between him and Rebecca leads to the most awkward scene in this entire show. And that's saying a lot. Karen tries to introduce them over dinner, but all they do is throw barbs at each other. Say hello to baby number 2. This is Reggie. He is fat, as you can see. We're trying to help him with that, but right now he's just a squishy little baby. Okay, bye. Eventually, Rebecca comments that she has seen this before. Boyfriends sometimes put their own egos ahead of their girlfriends having successful careers. And immediately, Dev starts accusing her of trying to turn Karen against him. Exhausting. And then, since, like me, Karen wants to escape the scene, she starts imagining Dev singing a Bollywood number. The number... oh my god. It's called 1001 Nights. Really, guys? Was Arabian Nights not available? Ah, why is Karen wearing a sari? Why are Tom, Julia, Derek, and Rebecca here? Stop putting the white people in this, please. Like, the song is catchy, but oh my god. I can't even elaborate on that. With that nightmare behind us, this conflict puts more strain on Dev and Karen's relationship, beyond just the work stuff. So when Karen leaves to Boston for tech rehearsals, Dev cheats on her. He makes out with RJ, and yeah. Feeling guilty, he then goes to Boston after her and asks her to marry him. My guy! Tech rehearsals are already stressful enough, but on top of that, Karen is trying to comfort her friend Rebecca, who is completely buckling under the pressure. As she explains, she doesn't have the headspace to properly consider it at the moment, so she says she can't give an answer about the proposal just yet. In the ensuing fight, he says that he refused a business opportunity in another town because she had to work on that stupid musical. Bitch! You refused without even telling her about it. Also, her job is stupid now? Just because she did go into some boring traditional career doesn't mean that what she does is meaningless. Finally, he says that at least RJ listens to him. Buddy, if you want Karen to listen to you, first you have to try and tell her things. And then to really cement my hatred, he says that he made out with RJ, but that he's totally a good guy because he could have slept with her and didn't. Karen rightly yells at him and leaves. God, I don't like Karen, but she deserves better. Dev is still mad at Karen, so when he later runs into Ivy at a bar, he decides to sleep with her just to hurt Karen. Ah! He ignores Karen the entire next day, and she gets so worried about him that when she finally sees him, she says that she apologizes and that she overreacted. Girl, in my opinion, you didn't react harshly enough. And then she accepts his proposal. Ah! She wouldn't even have found out about Dev and Ivy if Ivy herself didn't decide to tell her. At that point, Rebecca is already out of the picture, and Karen has already been made Marilyn, so when she finds out that Dev completely betrayed her trust, she doubles down on the weird muse director flirtation with Derek. What to do? In my opinion, it would be better to lean into her flaws more, especially her entitlement, because as is, she's pretty boring. Like, things just work out for her. She gets to be Marilyn even despite her overwhelming lack of experience. A big producer just offers her an opportunity because of her bar mitzvah gig. And a massively famous movie star just decides to make Karen famous. Because. Like, I don't like the term Mary Sue very much, but man, Karen is the definition of a Mary Sue. I would cut out the stuff with Rebecca and the stuff with the music producer because, man, I don't think Rebecca is actually necessary to this story at all. We all know she's not going to be Marilyn. And I would have her fight with her chorus colleague actually turn the other members of the chorus further against her, because that would make things harder for her when she became the understudy, and also it would highlight that her flaws are flaws by not having her entitlement be rewarded with sympathy. Furthermore, it would be interesting to see Karen's show with money a little bit. She's always talking about it anyway, how her credit card bill is too high, how the workshop doesn't pay enough, how she can't get enough shifts at the cafe. But she lives with Dev, and they live in this magazine-worthy apartment. So whenever Karen complains about money, all I can think is, Karen, look at where you live. Why do you care? So, easy fix. Just make her and Dev not live together. She says in the show anyway that she doesn't want to be financially dependent on him, so it would make even more sense if she didn't want to share a flat with him either. Her apartment would instead be small, drabby, and with things constantly breaking down. That would not only make her much more sympathetic to us, but it would give us a reason why she wants to move up the ranks so fast. She wants to improve her living conditions without having to depend on Dev. That would make the finale a lot more heartbreaking too, because she thinks she has finally gotten everything that she wanted. She is the lead, so she can improve her living situation, and she can finally marry Dev, because now she can share a life with him on equal footing. And then she finds out he slept with Ivy. Fuck! Now we have a strong reaction for her, not just against Dev. And unless there were serious changes to Derek's character, I would omit the flirty stuff between them completely. There! Now Karen has flaws and isn't nearly as annoying. Ivy Lynn. Ah, my daughter. I love her. Not only does Ivy, played by Megan Hilty, deserve to be Marilyn, argue with the wall, but in my opinion, she has the most interesting storyline in the entire show. We first see her attending the same interview that Karen was at, and immediately we see that the interviewers are scandalized because she's wearing tight jeans. Huh. Why is this show so against sexiness? This first episode we learned that Ivy has been on Broadway for 10 years now, and she has been hopping from chorus to chorus in several major projects. That's how she knows Tom. She works in the chorus of one of his previous plays, Heaven on Earth. And Tom, he has been around Ivy for a little bit now, and he has seen what she's going through. And that's partly why he invites her to record the first demo for Bombshell, and then later stage the first number with Derek. Who would have guessed? She kills it.
So run me round the faces, put me through my paces, and teach me all the things a slugger's lover should know.
Things are finally looking up for Ivy. After those 2 instances, she officially auditions for the show and gets a callback. She gets so excited that she even calls her mom to celebrate, and her mom has no idea what audition she's talking about. And she immediately shifts the subject to Ivy's brothers and sisters, who are doing better career-wise. Yeah, Mother Dearest, she is not. And right away, I'm invested. For some reason, I just find these circumstances easier to root for. And if you think it's because I'm old and bitter, I already felt that way when I watched the show in high school, okay? And that's a theme with Ivy. People always tell her that she doesn't have star quality, that she's not a natural, that she tries too hard. And despite it all, she forces herself to believe the opposite. I really like Megan Hilty too. She doesn't necessarily have the best line delivery, but she's really expressive. Like, just looking at her face, you can clearly tell what emotion the character is meant to be feeling, which is great during musical numbers. Her voice is also a little deeper, which is something that I tend to favor. Her arc this season is all about her facing her inferiority complex and realizing that she can, in fact, be a star. And then the second half of the season is her having that all broken down by the realities of the industry and her own self-destructive tendencies. It's honestly heartbreaking to watch. When I talk about the potential of Smash, this is it. As for her storylines, there is Derek. He's the one who first introduces Karen and Ivy, and he's clearly trying to push them to compete with each other. I kind of blame him for their rivalry getting as far as it does. Because we see Ivy being a little shady about Karen with her friends privately, but come on, Karen is the competition. If it was me, I would probably want to talk smack about her too. And how can we forget that Derek sleeps with Ivy? Have to resist. Urge to rant. Ivy's reaction when Tom comes to tell her that she got the part is honestly heart-wrenching. Before he can say anything, she assumes it didn't work out and starts trying to tell him that everything's fine, even as she's trying not to cry. Like, Megan Hilty is really good, you guys. She did get the part though, so she goes out to celebrate with her friends and sings Crazy Dreams at a bar. And this is a good example of how to integrate covers into the story, because the song is great, but it's made better because it reflects how Ivy's feeling. Honestly, hearing her sing Thank God Even Crazy Dreams Come True made me tear up for real. When rehearsals start, Ivy is surprised to find Karen there, and I don't blame her for being a little catty here. Like, Ivy was the only other contender for Marilyn. If your biggest rival suddenly showed up at your job clearly after your position, how would you feel? The first big hurdle for Ivy comes when there's that party for Nick Jonas and she sees Derek grabbing some girl's butt. She confronts him about it and says that she just wants to feel safe. In response, Derek says, "There's nothing safe about being a star." Buddy, that's not what she's talking about, and you know it. And Ivy still agrees to sleep with him, which is an extremely questionable decision. This is where we learn that Ivy's low self-worth also extends to relationships, because even while blatantly disregarding her well-being, Derek is still able to convince her to stay by displaying the bare minimum of kindness. He continues to be terrible at rehearsal. Derek decides that Ivy doesn't know how to do a vibrato, which is ridiculous. She has been doing it on every song thus far. And then he decides to have Karen teach her the technique. Come on, this shit is only meant to cause tension between them. There's no other explanation. Ivy meets Karen for her lesson, and I'll admit that here Karen is quite humble and nice about the whole thing, while Ivy is being bratty and irritable. Ultimately, she blows the whole thing off, telling Karen that what she has can't be taught. This is one of the most unnecessary moments of Ivy being rude to Karen, but it's a moment of growth for Ivy. She admits it herself that she is the right person for the part and that she has the right to be there. Soon after, Ivy goes to Derek's house drunk and confronts him about all of this. He says that it would be way easier to work if everyone just pretended they had no emotions. No shit, Sherlock. It's just not healthy, you unbearable little shit. As per usual, after saying some disgusting bullshit, he convinces Ivy to stay the night by doing the bare minimum. She is starting to question if this is a good idea though. There's this quiet moment when she wakes up at night and she's alone in the bed. She gets up just to find Derek working in the living room by himself. Not to get too analytical here, but this moment is a good representation of the general state of their relationship. In the end, Ivy is alone with him because Derek will always prioritize his work. Or whatever he sees as his work anyway. And then she loses her voice. Oh my god. Poor Ivy, man. Since there's a threat of Karen replacing her in rehearsals, Ivy takes a bunch of medication to try and get better fast, even though she's particularly susceptible to the side effects. And one night, she's home alone trying to cheer herself up, and as soon as she's feeling better, she looks in the mirror and hallucinates Karen dressed as Marilyn. Holy shit! Then Tom and Sam come to take care of her, and even while all of this is going on, she still asks them not to tell Derek anything. Yep. Healthy relationship, nothing to see here. It does make me feel better though that the next day, when Derek snaps at Ivy over nothing, she has a go at him. She says, and I quote,
I need to stop sleeping with men who are complete narcissistic pricks. Oh, and you're not that good looking. And you're not that good in bed either.
and then she leaves, slamming the door. You know, I changed my mind. These meds might not be such a bad idea after all. Jokes aside, this is a good moment for her. She is asserting her self-worth against a clearly abusive man. As if my darling wasn't going through enough, her mom comes to town. Her mother is like this famous Broadway actress called Lee Conroy. In public, things are civil, but in private, she started taking digs at Ivy. She says that she herself had a better career in the theater, and as a cherry on top, she says that she doesn't believe that Ivy can play Marilyn. Bear in mind that the night before, Ivy has to do just that in the workshop. Mother of the Year, this one. Given the circumstances, Ivy does a great job at the workshop. There are a few hiccups though, including Karen falling off a pedestal during a number because she was just dreaming too hard about being a star. Get what I mean when I say Karen is annoying? Just to make things worse, Derek psychs her out during intermission, blaming her for the mishaps that happened this far. Derek, if you were trying to make sure that your actors were going to be distracted and feeling like shit during the second act, great technique. Not satisfied with destroying her daughter's self-esteem earlier, Lee compliments everybody after the workshop except Ivy. Ivy has had enough of being disparaged by yet another person in her life though, and she fights with her mom. She compares her to Marilyn's mother, who was also pretty abusive. Later on in Ivy's house, Lee repents and she opens up to Ivy and says that she never wanted Ivy to get involved with the theater because that world broke her heart. And it's not because Ivy isn't good at it, because Ivy is amazing. She just can't stand to see people without half her talent pass her by. This is beautiful. I'm not gonna lie, I cried. Like, it's such an understandable feeling that you can't help but sympathize with Lee, no matter how horrible she's been to Ivy. This is Ivy's high point. She has asserted her worth as a star. She has demanded to be treated as valuable by her partner, and she has finally gotten the approval of her mom. It's unfortunately only downhill from there. First, she discovers that Derek chose to stage a number for Bombshell with Karen instead of her, which, after everything she said to Karen, is pretty humiliating on its own. But then, Tom comes to tell her that they will be hiring a movie star to play Marilyn, and thus she has been demoted. This completely destroys any confidence in her star power that she had built. No wonder then that when Derek comes knocking at her door saying that she was an amazing Marilyn, she takes him back because she needs to be wanted. She needs someone to tell her that she isn't disposable. Questionable decision? Absolutely, but it's really relatable and almost tragic. The next episode, we see that the side effects from the medication forced her to take several meds at once to try and balance it all out. And despite the fact that her throat is better now, she is still going strong with the pills. So let's look at this, shall we? By forcing her to take medications she was sensitive to, Derek ruined her life. He did! He ruined her life! Because now she has a drug addiction. And if you think I'm exaggerating, later that same episode in the Heaven on Earth backstage, Ivy is very effing depressed. She is looking at the Marilyn picture she keeps in her mirror and she stuffs her face with pills. She is so high that she's staggering across the stage. It's so noticeable that the lead in the play has to tell her to get off the stage. This is painful. And of course, because of some convenient bullshit, Karen saw the whole thing. Oof. God, I actually really like the song in this scene, but I can barely enjoy it because I feel so bad for Ivy. She and Karen actually hang out this night and they sing Cheers, Drink to That together. It's great. They don't get to sing together nearly enough. The two of them arrive at Ivy's place, drunkenly singing, and Ivy falls straight into bed. I think it's in this scene that Karen realizes just how important this part was to Ivy, because she sees all the Marilyn memorabilia around her house. And the blows just keep coming. Because of her little stunt, Ivy is fired from Heaven on Earth and from Bombshell. And while the movie star is wrapping up a tour somewhere, Karen, who is now the official understudy, will be Marilyn at rehearsals. Ivy is obviously extremely depressed, but despite that, she actually tells Derek to be nice to Karen because that's how he'll get the best results out of her. She's a better person than I am, I'll tell you that. It actually works. The next day rehearsal is way better. Who would have guessed? Somewhat suspiciously, Ivy is really nice to Karen the next few times they meet, and she does say that she's doing that to get on Karen's good side, so we know that she hasn't had a stroke. Her objective is to get everyone in the production to think that she's so nice, so kind, that they can overlook a little mistake like what she did, can't they? It works, by the way. They bring her back on. Meanwhile, though, Derek's obsession with Karen is only getting deeper, unbeknownst to Ivy. Derek, goddammit, you're already dating the best girl in this show. Get a grip! It also becomes clear that Rebecca has a little crush on Derek. At first, Ivy doesn't take it too seriously, but that changes during tech rehearsals. Rebecca organizes this little surprise where she sings happy birthday to Derek dressed as Marilyn. That gave him a big heart. And afterwards, Rebecca is like feeding Derek cake straight off her plate. You can see in Ivy's face that she's thinking, damn, that bitch is bold. Still, at this point, she doesn't think that anything is going on. That is, until she meets Alice at the entrance of the theater. She came to get Derek because she arranged to meet him at the hotel, but he never showed. And Alice says, wow, that's weird. Derek asked me to go out just now and buy something super random. Then they simultaneously realize that Derek is definitely up to some shit. They rush in and Rebecca's assistant is guarding the door, but they can still hear her and Derek giggling inside. And Ivy nearly starts to cry as she and Alice leave. At this point, Ivy has had enough of everybody's bullshit. There is this party at Karen's room, and Ivy arrives already kind of drunk, and she tells Karen that she will never forgive her for hiding Derek's and Rebecca's affair. Let's remember that Karen and Rebecca are besties. That's why Ivy thinks that Karen would have definitely known about the affair. Let's be clear, Karen didn't know shit, but Ivy is not in a place to hear her out right now. She keeps drinking her ass off and eventually runs into Dev at a bar. She knows who he is, by the way. This wasn't an accident. But there are two reasons why I don't blame Ivy for them sleeping together, at least not as much as Dev. First of all, Ivy has been drinking for hours when she runs into him, and Dev has just started drinking. And as a friend of mine would say, what one person doesn't want, two people don't do. Ideally. Second, Ivy's life has completely gone down the drain at this point, and the only way she felt worthwhile was being loved by Derek. And in her mind, it was her rivalry with Karen that ruined everything. Is she right? No, but it's also easier to blame a single thing or person than it is to evaluate all the complex factors that led you to make bad decisions. Happens to the best of us. She obviously regrets it, don't get me wrong, but the reason she tells Karen about the affair with Dev is obviously because she wants to get Karen so upset that she won't be able to replace Rebecca, forcing them to cast Ivy instead. But it doesn't work. And the only thing she accomplishes is turning the musical's new star against her. And when she realizes that, she decides that she's pretty much f***ed. The season ends with her about to take a handful of pills, while Karen has her ultimate triumphant moment. I kind of love this ending, but it hurts. I wonder if Ivy needed to be punished quite so harshly by the narrative. I mean, hasn't she been through enough? Like, one of the only things I would change about her story is give her some sort of a win this last episode. It could even be just her telling Derek to fuck off. Because if you don't give her any sort of little victory, it makes it seem like this ending is what she deserved. And that's not true. Like, the season can still end with her S-word attempt, but we know that she isn't nearly as mean as she appears. She's just a wounded person looking for love in all the wrong places. And no one deserves to feel like that. Also, something I want to say here is that these last 3 episodes are the best in the whole season. Like, I don't know if you can tell by the way I described it, but all the plot lines have dramatic culminations and it's just fast-paced, non-stop drama. This is what we're here for, guys! If this season had been like 5 episodes shorter, the whole show could have been this tight. Some episodes of the show are just a bore and watching them feels like torture. And then suddenly there are these banger episodes when I'm like,
this is so excellent. Oh my god, I love this show so much.
total whiplash. Ah! Season 2. Man, that took forever. The way I thought this video was gonna be shorter than the Scott Pilgrim one, and then my first draft of the first section was 30 pages long. So season 2 isn't as insane as season 1, so I don't have as much to say about it. I'm not going to divide it into characters, I'm just going to talk about the main overarching elements of it. There are 3 new important characters. These are Kyle Bishop, who is Andy Mientes, Jimmy Collins, who is Jeremy Jordan, and Ana Vargas, who is played by Crystal Rodriguez. But I don't care about any of them. Like last season, I described the plots of what, 6 characters? And that's because I omitted a lot of the Ellis and Sam stuff. This season, there are 9 characters with full-fledged side plots. And of course, they prioritize the characters that fans already know, so these new randos barely get any development. First, there's Jimmy. Jimmy is the new love interest for Karen, and I think he's supposed to be like the brooding artist, tortured type. And look, I don't know if it's just that I'm too old for this shit, or if it's just a bad iteration of the trope, but I can't stand him. Like, he's always annoyed, complaining, snapping at people. He's an annoying guy. Karen meets him when he's working at a bar, and of course he's rude to her at first for no reason. She doesn't like him either until she hears him playing an original song on the bar piano after hours. And the song is so beautiful, so amazing, that she immediately becomes obsessed with him and won't let it go no matter how rude he is. His friend Kyle is down to use Karen as a connection to get their musical produced though, so Jimmy ends up going with it. Eventually, they present the concept for their musical, Hit List, to Derek, and from that moment on, you just know everything there is to know about Jimmy. Like, the first character he talks about is the main character of the musical. It's clearly a self-insert. Listen to this. Jimmy. So there's this kid, right? He comes from a nothing family, you know, dad dies, mom remarries some animal, beats the crap out of him, kid packs up, lives on the street, drugs, stealing, you know, whatever. He hates the world, he thinks everybody's against him, which is probably right. He wishes he could show everyone how they really are. His music, right? It's the one thing he's got. Songs about other people who've lied to him, people who've broken his heart, trying to take him, be fake. Kyle. Calls them his hit list. That's how he gets his revenge. Jimmy. They're good, they may even be great, but he's a nobody from nowhere, with no way out, and no way in. Karen. Until he meets this girl that he can't have. Yeah, that's Jimmy. That's his backstory, like, literally. Add in a brother that got him into sad drugs, and a girl that looked like she OD'd, but didn't, and that's it. That's his backstory. It also becomes clear that he started seeing Karen as this girl that the character can't have. That's Jimmy. He's pretty annoying. Now, Kyle is gay. Gay. He's nice. He has a crush on Jimmy. That's pretty much it. Like, at the beginning of the show, he's writing the script for Hit List, but it turns out he's, what's the word? Bad. So they decide to make the musical sung through because, like that, Jimmy can write the whole thing. He has this love interest, but I didn't realize that that guy was supposed to be like his boyfriend and not a one-night stand until Jimmy pointed out that Kyle had cheated on him with Tom. Because why have 2 main characters that are gay if they aren't dating? Otherwise, he's just working on the show and trying to fix whatever brash, stupid thing Jimmy has done now. Is there anything else of note about Kyle? Oh yeah, he dies. Yeah, the show said 3 recurring gay characters, too much. Gotta bury one of those. Like, I don't know if you can tell, but Kyle's pretty bland, so I don't really care if he D-words. It's like he was only written in as a close friend of Jimmy's so he could D-word later in the season, and then Jimmy would angst about that some more. Yay, more of this. Lastly, Anna. I don't dislike her or anything, but the introduction of her storyline is really clumsy. Okay, backing up a little bit. Who is Anna? Anna is a friend of Karen's. They move in together after she and Dev break up. Dev isn't in the season at all, by the way. And at first, Anna is just a really good friend of Karen's. Her plotline is introduced over halfway through the season when she is cast as the diva in Hit List. Who is the diva? If you said a pop star, congratulations, you can be a screenwriter. As Hit List develops, Anna's character becomes more prominent, threatening to overshadow the female lead, who is played by Karen. As you might imagine, Miss Entitled does not take this well. She is very snide to Anna, like implying that she doesn't deserve that position. Can you imagine that? Like your best friend telling you that you don't deserve what is essentially a promotion? From then on, Anna is upset, which reasonably so, and she acts like a bit of a diva to Karen. I'm sorry for that. But then Coyote words, which makes Anna reevaluate, and she decides to forgive Karen. Once again, Karen is never wrong. Eventually, Anna gets fired from Hit List because of some insane bullshit regarding Derek, which we'll get to. And that's pretty much it for her. Like, she tries to sue Derek, but he bribes her with a major role in another production, so she drops it. Yeah, that's it. It might sound like I'm omitting a lot, but I swear I'm not. Like, she hardly ever gets any screen time, and yet when something bad happens to her, the show expects us to care. Like, oh no, they can't fire Anna. Guys, like, I literally didn't get her name until episode 7. 1/3 of the way into a 17-episode season, I didn't remember her name. Another theme this season is characters that sprout out of the ground or straight up vanish around the middle of the season. For example, there's this playwright that helps Julia rework the script for Bombshell. Yeah, remember how I mentioned she was neglecting her job last season? So the script for Bombshell was panned in Boston, and then they asked her to work with this playwright to improve it. And she does it. She ends up with this script that is brilliant and everybody loves it. But they decide to throw it out. So they end up regressing to the script they used in the workshop around mid-season 1. After that, the playwright just vanishes. It never appears again. Other examples are Veronica. She was a Broadway sweetheart as a kid, and Derek organizes a show for her, and he organizes a show for her, and she never appears again. Or Eileen's publicist. She shows up around the middle of the season and is her publicist. Then there's Scott. Scott shows up around the middle of the season as well, and he's the head of the Actor Studio. They're an in-universe theater collective with a few stages that puts on a couple plays every season. Since Hit List at first doesn't have a lot of financial backing, they were originally staged there. But Scott's main character connection isn't with anyone working on Hit List, it's with Julia. Huh? It seems a little random, right? I feel like this is a good excuse to get into the plot of this season. Julia's husband leaves her because he kissed a colleague and got ridiculously defensive when Julia asked him about it. Good riddance, Frank. You will not be missed. Then there is the fallout of the conflict with Alice. Someone leaks the info about Nick to the Fed, so Bombshell is frozen unless they can replace Eileen with someone else. And we find out that this was orchestrated by both Alice and Jerry so that Jerry could take over Bombshell. And Eileen lets him because like that, you know, the show gets to move on to Broadway, and also she can still be somewhat involved through Jerry. Unofficially, of course. She does manage to get back control eventually through a loophole. I don't feel like explaining it more than that. I didn't really get it. But my friend Eileen gets her project back. Good for her. The third conflict is that, because of some shady comments he made to the press, Rebecca came out alleging that Derek assaulted her in her dressing room. We know that this is false. We saw them consensually getting it on. Immediately, I want to stop and rant about the woman pretending to be assaulted to ruin a man trope. But then a few dancers come out with their own harassment allegations against Derek, and all of their stories seem pretty legit. He loses out on some job prospects and stuff, but Eileen decides to keep him on board of Bombshell because she knows he's a womanizer, but he would never do something like that. Back up a season of this very show, he tried to pressure Karen into sleeping with him. Like, what the hell, Eileen? He tries to confront one of the dancers, Daisy. Great decision, buddy. And we find out that he essentially hit on her through 4 rounds of auditions, and when she definitively turned him down, she mysteriously lost out on the role. Huh. He says it wasn't like that, but we've seen him do this before. He tried to sleep with Karen, and when she said no, he hired Ivy, the one who agreed to sleep with him, even though he clearly preferred Karen for the role. He has done this before. He goes into a bit of an existential spiral after that, wondering if every single woman he ever slept with felt pressured into it, which he absolutely should reflect on. And then there's this bizarre musical number where he imagines Karen and Ivy plus all the dancers performing Would I Lie to You for him. missing what we're supposed to take away from this. Is it supposed to be like they're taunting him? Is it supposed to be empowering? Like, haha, these girl bosses tricked this sucker guy into thinking that they wanted him. I don't think I want to know. Beside that, Jerry's a bit of a as usual, so no one really likes having him around. And Derek in particular was really hung up on that second script Julia wrote, so after they go back to the old one, he is constantly cranky. Eventually, Tom suggests a different staging for a number, and Derek just quits. He says he feels like no one cares what he thinks anymore. And like, is he wrong? I know, I don't care. Anyway, at this point, he and Karen are already working on Hit List as a side project, so he goes into that full time. Karen quits Bombshell shortly after Derek, but in her case, it's because Tom replaces Derek as director, and he and Karen just don't click. She also realizes that Ivy was the person that Tom always envisioned for the part, so he will probably create a better project working with Ivy. Speaking of Ivy, after she was fired, she got a part on another play, which turned out to be the vanity project of this unhinged comedian. So the play was random as hell and just straight up weird. If you want to watch something crazy today, look up Ce n'est pas ma faute, Smash. Watch it to your own discretion, okay? Turns out that Ivy's performance was one of the only redeemable things about the play, so she ended up getting a good rep with critics.
And Sophie, that is why I'm writing this to you.
And the show closed after a week, which means that Ivy was free to go back to Bombshell as Marilyn afterwards. And now the stage is set. There is the Bombshell crew and the Hit List crew. Hit List is off-Broadway but is getting great reviews, and Bombshell is a massive production, but there is a lot of scandal surrounding it. And the question remains, who will get the most coveted Tonys? If you don't know what the Tonys are, it's essentially the Oscars, but for Broadway. Initially, Hit List isn't eligible for them because they're off-Broadway, but of course they're going to transfer to Broadway because what would be the fun if they weren't competing with Bombshell directly? For now, they're in the actor workshop though. And since Julia is still on friendly terms with Derek, she ends up finding out that they're working with Scott. Turns out the two of them went to college together. They were very close, but then Julia essentially f***ed him over for a career opportunity. That's why he's very antagonistic towards her when they first meet, and he only agrees to play nice if she helps out with Hit List. And so she does. She helps out Kyle a little bit, and after he's gone, she even helps out Jimmy in his stead. She and Scott reconcile during this entire process, and there is even like a little flirtation starting to brew between them. Oh. But when Kyle D-words, Scott uses this as an opportunity to bring even more attention to Hit List. Julia is obviously disgusted, and she cuts relations with Scott, and he is promptly exiled from the plot. But what about Tom? Is he getting any? Sadly, no. Sam got a prominent part in a tour of the Book of Mormon at the beginning of the series, so he's away for most of it. The main thing going on with Tom, instead, is his directorial debut. It gets to his head a little bit. He starts writing in whatever people ask so the cast will like him. That means that when Sam comes back to town, complaining that he isn't totally satisfied with how the tour is going, Tom spontaneously offers to write him a part. Except that he has the realization that all of these changes won't make the play any better and will actually probably make it worse. So he walks back on that promise, but the time that takes him to make that realization, Sam already quit his leading role in the Book of Mormon. They offer him a spot in the chorus of Bombshell again, but he is obviously resentful. And they hired Ivy's mom to be Marilyn's mom, so now she hates Tom too. Besides all of this, by the end of the season, Demon Derek is back on his bullshit. He has a few one-night stands with Ivy, but when she realizes that he was still actively hitting on Karen, she cuts him off. And she argues that he might be done with Karen now, but there will always be a Karen that he fixates on as a muse. And Ivy already knows that's not her. Bummed out about this, Derek decides not to question it when Daisy, remember the dancer, shows up out of nowhere saying that she's so sorry and she totally wants to sleep with him now. Yeah, it's a trap. She waits for him to do something disgusting, as he does, and the something terrible in question is that he essentially says he'll give her a part in Hit List if she shows him that she wants it enough. Demon! And of course, she recorded everything. Good for her. And now that she's got blackmail material on him, he is forced to fire Anna so that she can be the diva. You know what? I'm Team Daisy on this. This is entirely Derek's fault. And he was going to get away with it too. Remember, Anna dropped the lawsuit. But then Ivy throws in his face that what he's doing is horrible. So he confesses to a journalist or whatever. Is this supposed to redeem him? No! He hasn't learned anything. He only wants his backup girlfriend to like him again. Also, right before the finale, Ivy finds out that Derek got her pregnant. Ah! Speaking of the finale, it starts with this amazing rendition of Pressure. It shows all of the main characters leaving their own shows, singing the song, until they all meet in the Tony stage. It's kind of epic and iconic. It gave me chills. And I know that's lame, okay? Leave me alone. In the end, there's a little tension, but Bombshell wins the main awards. You know, Best Musical, Best Leading Actress, and my baby Ivy is validated. Hooray! But Hit List wins more awards in terms of overall numbers, so Team Karen doesn't revolt. Boo! The series ends with a few open threads. Tom and this critic have some flirty vibes. Tom and Julia are working together again after he got a little too up his own ass as a director. Julia goes back to Michael, who hasn't been in the season at all this far, but okay. Nick is out of jail. Jimmy goes to jail because of his previous drug business. And Ivy and Derek end the season hugging because she told him about the pregnancy. Bleh. So, what do we think about all of this? Firstly, let's just acknowledge something. Sam ends up going into Hit List as Jimmy's understudy. So he's still in the story, technically. He's in the Pressure number, implying that he'll have some kind of conclusion as a character, but then he's not in the last episode at all after that. Literally, he doesn't have a single line. The implied conclusion for him is that Jimmy goes to jail, so he's gonna get to be the lead in Hit List. But that's never even stated by anyone. Ellis is not even in this season, he's only alluded to as a big bad. But Scott and the playwright are excised from the plot, as discussed. Veronica also disappears. None of these characters have conclusions. Huh. I wonder what's different about all of them. Overall, I liked a lot of things about this season. It's kind of hilarious, though, how some elements come and go midway through. Julia's family plot also completely disappeared. Like, I get that it was overblown last season, but it's weirder just to get completely rid of it. A hot take, but Scott and Peter, the playwright, could have been the same character. It would give Julia an extra reason not to want to work with the playwright at first, because she knows Scott hates her. And it actually creates a season-long arc. Oh, and don't have her come back to Michael? What the hell, guys? Just remove the part where Scott takes advantage of Kyle's D-word. It was out of character for him anyway. Also, I think they should have either introduced an entirely new cast or stuck with the old cast. Just with the addition of a few extras who wouldn't have side plots. Or they could have introduced an entirely new cast producing Hit List with just one or two characters from the previous season. Since I wasn't satisfied with Ivy's ending last season, I'm glad that she got to live out her dreams. But objectively, I think it would have been better to introduce a new cast. Maybe with Ivy, since she was unemployed at the beginning of this season anyway. And then the old cast could return as rivals for Tony season, so we know how everyone ended up. Another thing is that they handle Derek's character very strangely. Like, they have him do a lot of obviously unforgivable shit, and then try to redeem him. He is really a character that could only exist at this point in time. When they wanted to comment on powerful men who had that kind of attitude, but still managed to get away with saying, he's not such a bad guy after all. That's the pain of watching this series. It has so much potential, but the script and, at points, the acting isn't good enough to live up to all of these ideas. Part 3, Musicals. everybody. So we're doing more Marilyn at leisure today. And yeah, I was not able to record everything in a single day. This script is quite a bit longer than the Scott Pilgrim one, so yeah. I think this part is pretty self-evident. This is a show where they make musicals, so let's talk about them. What I think of the numbers, and together, do they make for good musicals? Starting with Bombshell. All the songs for Bombshell were written by Mark Shaman and Scott Whitman. They are a real well-established writing duo, and they're famous for the Broadway versions of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Catch Me If You Can, and Hairspray. I'll present the songs in the order that they would have appeared on Broadway in the show. This was compiled by fans, so there may be mistakes, but from what I've seen, I think it's correct. And one more thing, I can't talk about all the songs without making this video like 3 hours long. I might still do that someday, let me know if you want to see it, but yeah, today I'm only going to talk about the ones that I find more interesting. Okay, let's have a look, shall we? First song, Let Me Be Your Star.
It's all here and my heart's bleeding. Let me be your star.
The first time I hear this song is at the end of the pilot, and let me tell you, this song alone drew a lot of people in because it's really good. Like, the composition of the voices is just amazing, and the two actresses have the chance to belt out to the heavens on that final note, and it perfectly conveys the excitement and hope of starting something new. As an opening number, I don't think it's perfect. It's an I Want song. If you're unfamiliar with the term, an I Want song is basically when the character sings about what they want in life, what their ambitions are before the story has a chance to start properly. Think about Part of Your World in The Little Mermaid. And in this song, Marilyn is singing about her ambitions to stardom despite having a humble upbringing. And the norm in most musicals is that you don't start with the I Want song. Like, you can do that, but it's considered better to establish the conditions that the character is living under before they start singing about their deepest desires, you know? Also, she's dressed as Norma Jean here, and most people who have an interest in Marilyn know that she used to go by another name, but they might have never seen what she looked like before. So I wonder if your average tourist going to see a musical about a public figure that they don't know that much about would realize who this is. They might be like, nice song, but where's Marilyn? Like, is that her? Why does she have brown hair?
They want money, fame, and love.
Second song, At Your Feet.
Stars more concrete, so the stars that you wish to know are at your feet. I have to work each Saturday.
This song was cut out of Smash, but it's performed by Norma Jean and her mother. We've backed up to her childhood, and her mother is dropping her off at the Chinese theater to watch movies all day because she has to go to work and she needs to leave Norma Jean somewhere. And in this song, they sing about how one day Norma Jean might grow up to be like one of those stars who signed their names on the pavement. I think it's a nice addition to the show, but as far as I know, Gladys, who is Marilyn's mother, wasn't the one who dreamed she would become a movie star. That was Gladys's friend, Grace, who ended up taking care of Marilyn after her mother was institutionalized. But that's okay. To me, like in adaptations like that, you often have to condense multiple real people into single characters. What I take issue with here is that Tom decided to change the original ending of the number where Marilyn would have been left alone in the Chinese theater because Kyle said it would be too much of a bummer. Dude, no shit. Marilyn's childhood was kind of a bummer. And based on her memoir, I don't think she would appreciate having it sanitized like that. Besides that, I think the song is a little repetitive. Like, it doesn't convey a whole lot. Okay, Marilyn's mother is kind of neglectful and she wants Norma Jean to be a star. What else? It's not a very efficient song. And it might sound kind of weird to demand efficiency out of songs, but it's actually one of the perks of the medium. Songs can be really efficient. They can convey the characters' emotional states, plot beats, anecdotes from their lives that tell us more about who they are, and I think that's what's missing here. Fifth song, the 20th Century Fox Mambo.
The 20th Century Fox.
The choreography in Bombshell numbers is generally very good, but this one knocks it out of the park. It's very fast-paced and high energy, and I've seen Catherine McPhee performing this live in like footage, and it's insane. Like, ask any K-pop fan, but doing intricate choreography while singing, it's not an easy task. But it has some dumb lyrics in it, which you realize is a theme in all of these songs. For example, now I'm blonde, but I ain't so dumb. Hollywood would be under my thumb. There's always something like this in these songs, they can't help themselves. I think the lyrics for this one were inspired by Marilyn's first audition for the 20th Century Fox in 1946. Her audition tape made the rounds inside the studio, and people seemed to think that there was something to it, despite the clear inexperience of the actress. But fun fact, this wasn't actually Marilyn's big break. Her career would begin as we know it around 1950, when her second contract with the studio began. But again, adaptation. You gotta condense things. So it would make sense that they would make this her big breakthrough moment, where she would truly transform herself into the version of her we know. It makes sense because it was during this first contract that, along with a studio executive, Norma Jean actually coined the name Marilyn Monroe. From a story perspective, this scene also works well. It highlights what helped Marilyn stand out. The sheer determination to overcome her flaws, the willingness to play into her sensuality, and transform herself to assume a unique persona. Sixth song, The National Pastime.
The national pastime.
Okay, so this song is Marilyn asking some players questions about baseball because she's got a date with Joe DiMaggio, who was a baseball player. And the song is basically entirely innuendo and puns. And you can take your pick of dumb lyrics from this song alone. For example, when I was a little girl, I loved being dainty and pretty. But now I've given sports a whirl, I find I kind of like to get dirty. But I love this one. It has so much energy, and to me it sounds exactly like those old-timey baseball halftime songs. The choreography in this one is also incredible. I was surprised to find out that Megan Hilty wasn't a dancer. Like, once you know, you can clearly tell that the choreography was created to conceal that fact. Like, it's mainly other dancers hoisting her around. But it's impressive how flowing and dynamic it still manages to look. The song doesn't advance the plot at all, aside from telling us that Marilyn has a date. But it's so fun that I think it's worth keeping. It's almost a parody of the kind of movies that Marilyn was shooting at the time. Songs filled with innuendo and puns were kind of a staple of hers. Eighth song, I Never Met a Wolf Who Didn't Love to Howl. So this number is set in Korea when Marilyn did a tour performing for the troops there. Since that war was, what do you call it, an embarrassing failure, I would have omitted that bit. The context for this was that Marilyn actually ditched Joe during a trip they were taking in Japan in order to do the tour. Joe was pissed. But despite this, Marilyn says that this was one of the first times when she felt truly happy with herself. And I think that's because she felt like she was contributing to something bigger. And this ties into her desire of being taken more seriously. If you're going to include a song about her time in Korea, why not explore all this? No, it's another one made up of innuendo and bad jokes. If you find out anything about her, is that she likes being in Korea. One thing I like about it though is that the choreography again is very good. And make no mistake, if this played at a party, I would dance like an idiot. Now for the classic dumb lyrics segment. The medals on my chest will make them weak in the knees. No, stop it. Ninth song, Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Merely the folks
This song, I have thoughts. It's essentially Marilyn and Joe singing about how they wish they could have a small, simple, anonymous life. And it's probably a sentiment that Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio could relate to, but to a normal person, this sounds so whiny. Like, they're describing the most boring life ever, and it only sounds exciting to them because they can't have it. As far as accuracy goes, after Marilyn came back from Korea, she reportedly wanted to start a family with Joe. That's documented. But this song makes it sound like Marilyn wanted nothing more than to quit her job and live anonymously. And that's not the impression I got. Like, despite everything, it seems like Marilyn quite enjoyed fame and glamour. One of the biggest points of contention of her relationship with Joe was that she didn't want to quit acting. I think they romanticized this couple a little too much. Like, he might have been allegedly even physically abusive. 10th song. Don't say yes until I finish talking.
Don't say yes until I finish talking.
Oh, I like this one. This one is Daryl Zanuck, the studio director, in his sauna with some executives discussing Marilyn's excessive demands. I think this is in reference to when they wanted her to act in The Girl in Pink Tights in 1953. Marilyn did something super daring for the time. She asked to read the script before she decided if she wanted to act in it or not. The horror. Zanuck stalled to hell and back, making up a bunch of excuses why she couldn't read the script, and eventually finally gave in and sent it to her a full year later. Jesus Christ. Eventually, she decided she didn't want to act in it, so they placed her on suspension with no pay and replaced her with a newbie. It's a good place for this song. It creates a sense of escalating conflict after the emotional high of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, assuming I like that song. It's also a fun villain number. You can really tell how little these executives respected Marilyn, even though she was one of their biggest box office draws. Then, at the end, Zanuck decides that he won't cave to her demands, so the plot has moved forward. See what I mean? Efficiency. But I have to admit that it has like some of the dumbest lyrics in the entire show. At some point, they say, "We bow down to the rears of all the studio chiefs, and you can bet your ass we've kissed them." This is the weirdest way of calling someone a kiss ass I've ever heard. 11th song, On Lexington and 52nd Street.
Here on Lexington and 52nd Street, it is chaos.
There's some transitional dialogue here, a fight between Marilyn and Joe about her part in the 7-year itch. You know, the famous scene where her skirt blows up, the outfit that I was referencing before? Yeah, Joe was really sour about that, and this song is him leaving her. This happened after 20th Century Fox agreed to bring Marilyn back in and gave her a raise and a couple of really big roles. So I like to imagine that Zanuck would have like his big villain number, and then someone would come in saying, "Sir, our sales went down catastrophically." And then Zanuck would be like, "Oh my god, bring Marilyn back in immediately! Give her whatever she wants!" Well, about the song, it's a good one. It focuses on Joe's bitterness over Marilyn's exposure to the public and her success. It might be a little too sympathetic to someone that I consider a controlling and unsupportive man, but the emotion is definitely there. 13th song, Dig Deep.
Sleep. Yeah, I'm not just here today.
I'm here to dig.
This is the Act 2 opener. It signals a radical shift in Marilyn's life as she announced in 1954 that she was moving to New York and starting her own production company, Marilyn Monroe Productions. There she started taking acting lessons from Lee Strasberg. He believed that the key to portraying a complex character was relating the character's experiences to your own. And this was something that Marilyn's previous acting coach and friend? Codependent, not girlfriend? Natasha Leigh Tess also believed, so the approach interested Marilyn. Lee also recommended psychotherapy for her, however, all of this was really intense. Reliving her traumas constantly took a massive toll on her mental health. This is what the song is referencing. The idea is that she wants to dig deep in her psyche and unlock her true potential, which is a fine concept for a song. It's okay. I don't know. There's something I don't like about it. The beat is nice, it's high energy, it moves the plot forward, but also introduces us to the concept of Marilyn wanting to be taken seriously as an actress. But there's sort of a mocking tone to it. Yet another point where I'm like, what are you trying to do here? Show? What do you want to accomplish with this? 15th song, Secondhand White Baby Grand.
But that second-hand white baby grand still has something.
So the song shows us Marilyn recounting an actual anecdote from her childhood. She's telling Lee Strasberg about this time when she was living with her mother, and Gladys bought a piano, a white piano, from someone at the studio she worked at. It was a fond memory of Marilyn's. She even recounts it in her book. She didn't get to keep the piano when her mother was institutionalized, though. And years later, when she had her own money, she tracked it down and bought it back for her. The first time I saw the show, I didn't like this song very much. But this time, it hit different. Because I saw it in the context of Ivy's arc. So lines like, something secondhand and broken still can make a pretty sound, and I still have something beautiful to give, are powerful, both for Ivy and Marilyn. One thing that would concern me if this was a real musical is that the story is a little niche. Maybe I would have explained it a little bit more. 17th song, Let's Be Bad. Based on what they say, I think this is supposed to take place in the set of Some Like It Hot, when Marilyn is already with Arthur Miller, so 1958. The song is another parody of the numbers Marilyn usually performed in movies, but what really makes it is the staging and choreography. So when she arrives in the set in this scene, everyone's already pissed at her because she's late. And Marilyn being late was quite a common occurrence because of her mental health struggles and general anxiety. And in the scene, she's also high, which was also quite a common occurrence because Marilyn had a pill problem. Before she starts recording, she tells Arthur that she needs to do this because somebody needs to support them. This is accurate because, according to my research, there was a point when her income was the only income between the two of them. So she starts doing the number, she's doing her best, but then she hears the director complain that she's too high and that the footage is unusable. Hearing this, her voice fails and she bends down like she has a headache. At this moment, the dancers lean on top of her just to give the sensation of how overwhelmed she feels, while everyone else on set tells her to just keep dancing, she's gorgeous. The rest of the number just gets more and more frantic. The dancers keep leaning on top of her with these sinister expressions and almost puppeteering her at times. I would like the depth of this scene to be a little more reflected on the lyrics, but damn, this number is really good. Like, it really conveys well what it would be like to work on a busy set with severe mental health struggles and basically the weight of the world on your shoulders. It's powerful, there's no other word for it. Yes, I am talking about the song with the lyric, "Here's a girl with twice the spicing." 18th song, Hang the Moon. I think this is supposed to take place when Marilyn went to visit her mother in a sanatorium in 1962. And the song is about Gladys telling Marilyn that she wishes she could rearrange their lives like she used to do with the film roles in the studio she worked at. Cut out all of her mistakes, rearrange them, leave only the best bits, make her daughter the star of her life, like she was always supposed to be. And look, did Marilyn and her mother have a heartfelt conversation that day? I don't know. There's no way to know. It's possible, but I don't think it matters. The song is so beautiful, I freaking cried. And if this didn't happen between Marilyn and her mom, I wish it did. Because things between them weren't great. And what every kid who has been hurt by their parents' actions wants to hear more than anything is a heartfelt apology. A sincere apology. Especially one worded as beautifully as this one. 20th song, Secondhand White Baby Grand reprise.
Secondhand Baby grand.
This is Marilyn's D-word scene. She spends her last moments talking to someone on the phone, we never find out who, but she's begging them for company. She tries to lure them to her by saying that she's more beautiful than ever, since that's what people normally want from her. She has clearly taken a lot of stuff and is wasting away while she talks on the phone. Look, Marilyn's final moments are a contentious topic. I'm not here to argue that this is definitively how it went down. What we know is that she went in her room with the telephone and that she OD'd. So is this what happened? Who knows? Might be. There are several people who claim to have gotten calls from her that night. But this is a good ending for this story. The story of a woman who was emptied by a world that at the same time couldn't get enough of her, but wanted her to stay in that same little box and perform the same trick over and over again. Not to sound too heated about it. 21st song, Don't Forget Me.
Someone's hurt and in need of a hand. You don't forget me.
This is another moving one. This is Marilyn's plea to the audience and to the people in her life that she is not forgotten. That her story can stay on as an example of a person who needed help and needed care, but shined so spectacularly that she made it all worth it. She begs us to extend that same helping hand to the people in our lives and to remember her as the star she was. Okay, Marilyn. You can count on me. The final notes of the song are another great opportunity for the actresses to show their chops, and they both do absolutely amazing at it. No surprise, it hits a little harder for me coming from Ivy. This is such a triumphant moment for her. This is her biggest dream come true. She wants nothing more in life than to create a legacy that will be remembered. And it almost makes me cry to see that in her head she's singing to her mother. Just amazing. This ending is amazing. And to kind of dissipate the serious atmosphere that I've created here, random comment. The Marilyn wigs in this production, quality stuff. If anyone worked in the production of Smash, just leave it in the comments how you guys applied that stuff so seamlessly, because I want to know. For cosplay purposes, their wigs are heaps and bounds better than mine. Hit list. So all the songs for Bombshell were written by two guys, right? Not Hit List. Hit List is a mess. There are some songs that are just completely out of place, and yeah, it's because they were written by a completely different person. I'll say who wrote the songs as I go through them, but just a side note, this musical has way less songs, especially for the second act. I don't know why, maybe they were more inspired by Marilyn. The show starts out with a taste of Broadway Here I Come, one of my favorite songs from Hit List. It's sung by the antagonist of the show as she eerily walks towards the audience holding up a gun. And then, bang! Lights out. It's an intriguing beginning, and you don't find out what it means until the very end. First song, Rewrite This Story by Faizak and Paul. So the writers for this song are the same guys who wrote Dear Evan Hansen, and you can really tell. Like, I'm not here to defend Dear Evan Hansen as a play, but there are some bops in there. For example, Waving Through a Window is a freaking banger, Argue with the Wall, and so is this song. It talks about the story of the two main characters, Jesse and Amanda. Jesse? Man, Jimmy wasted no brain cells coming up with that one. Jesse talks about being stuck in a bad neighborhood, being broke, and having a shitty job at a bar. And Amanda talks about just being another mildly talented pretty face, trying to break into a saturated industry full of privileged girls like her. And I like it. It's short but sweet. It introduces well the circumstances of the two main characters as the show begins, and it's hype enough that it starts the show off with a nice energy. Good job. Third song, Broadway Here I Come by Joe Iconis.
Oh, Broadway, here I come.
This man wrote my personal hell in musical form, Be More Chill. And look, there are some cool songs in Be More Chill, but none of them slap nearly as hard as Broadway Here I Come. Why this guy would save his best song for someone else's show, I have no idea. But thank you, Joe Iconis. This nearly makes up for your crimes against humanity. The song is apparently Amanda considering S-word in the story. Okay, that's not remotely the vibe I got from hearing it. The song just has a fantastic energy. It conveys that determination to follow an impossible dream so well, the anticipation and fear. But I'll say that the best version we get from this song is the first time we hear it, when Jimmy is playing it at the bar. In that version, they use some strings in the instrumentation that really make the song for me. Without them, the song's just not the same. But this leads me to the negatives. It might be because it was written by a bunch of different people who probably didn't all know the full story of the show. But as a sung-through musical, which Hitless is supposed to be, remember? So they decided to make the musical sung through because, like that, Jimmy can write the whole thing. It's very freaking confusing. Anyway, Jessie stops Amanda from jumping, I think, off a bridge because she hears him singing one of his original songs, which is our next number. Fourth song, The Love I Meant to Say, Mark Shaman and Scott Whitman.
To show the love I meant to say.
This one is from the regular Smash writing duo, and it might be because it's the first low-key song from this show, but it feels a little out of place. They might just not be used to writing in this more contemporaneous pop style that Hitless tends to go for. This song's kind of boring. It's a kind of generic love song where the narrator is regretting not having done what he could to salvage his relationship. Any emotional weight that the song gets in Smash, it's because Jimmy sings it right after Kyle D-words. So it's recontextualized to be about Kyle and their relationship and Jimmy's regrets regarding that. But man, if I wanted to jump off a bridge, this would not stop me. My cat just made like very weird noises. Should I be worried? Also, isn't this show supposed to be sung through? Shows like this often require awkward little songs like Aaron Burr, Sir, and Hamilton that are basically just rhyming dialogue. But whoever was commissioning the songs for Hitless just clearly didn't feel like ordering anything like that. Sixth song. Original by Basic and Paul. Here we hit that mismatch I was talking about. If the other song sounded more like Coldplay meets Sia, this one goes straight into early Carly Rae Jepsen with accents of Taylor Swift. It has nothing to do with the other songs from the show. Which is weird, because Basic and Paul have already written a song for this show. The first one, and that one fit in perfectly. Yeah. Hey, my little daughter. Yeah. This is my third cat. This is Minerva. She's really sweet, but she's a little bit scared-ish. She doesn't like being in my lap a lot. But she's gonna leave. Bye. As to what the song actually says, Amanda is explaining to Jessie the history behind celebrities like the Diva and Lady Gaga, who were privileged girls like her and who managed to stand out by creating an outstanding persona, leading the audience to understand that that's what she wants to do too. My problem with it, besides the stylistic contrast, is that songs that's just kind of repetitive. It's that kind of song where the chorus is just the same two lines repeated over and over again. And you can be into that, I'm just not. And it's also a problem that people have with Dear Evan Hansen songs. Seventh song, I Heard Your Voice in a Dream by Andrew McMahon. I don't think this songwriter usually works with musicals. He is in Something Corporate and Jack's Mannequin, which are mildly well-known bands. But to his credit, the song fits in well with the other ones, and I really like it. This song takes place after Jessie and Amanda sleep together, and she sneaks off taking a bunch of his songs. He sings about his renewed perspective now that he has met her, saying that he feels like he has a purpose in life now. And he knows that deep down she's still more interested in fame and the spotlight than she is in him, hence why she stole a bunch of his songs. But he doesn't care. As long as he can be there to hear her sing, he is willing to forgive that. You have to do a little bit of interpreting to get there. The song isn't as spelled out as a song in a musical probably should be. That's because you are, in theory, going to listen to it live and aren't going to have an opportunity to listen to it multiple times to interpret it. That's probably due to Andrew's background. But since this project necessitated that I listen to these songs a bunch of times, I'm kind of glad for that. Another thing I like here is the choreography. This number is very well choreographed. The way the dancers pull Jessie back in his quest to reach Amanda is really nice. It's like the world itself is trying to keep them apart. Eighth song, Don't Let Me Know by Lucy Silvas and Jamie Alexander Hartman.
Let me know if it hurts, if it hurts.
Okay, Lucy Silvas is a British singer-songwriter, mostly known by her first album, Breathe In. And Jamie is also a British singer and songwriter and producer, formerly the leading man of pop indie band Band's Brother. The song shows us the progression of the relationship between Jesse and Amanda. They have become really codependent. He depends on her for basic emotional stability, and she depends on him for his songs to maintain her fame and status. Not that you can understand all of this from this song, I know because they explain it during Smash. The song is about a codependent, unhealthy relationship. Yes, but not this one in specific. It's not a bad topic for a song. It's not even a bad song, but as a number in a musical, it doesn't work because it doesn't explain the situation. The characters don't even express their feelings aside from in the vaguest way possible. And according to how they first describe Hitlist, I think this is where Act 1 is supposed to end. And then Act 2 would be more focused on Amanda's rivalry with the diva. 10th song, I'm Not Sorry by Andrew McNeil.
To break it to you, I'm not sorry for the person I've become.
Hey, another one by him. Here we get a little introductory scene where JV, Nina's manager, explains that he arranged for her and the diva to perform together at the VMAs, and that Nina is dead set on taking down the diva. Yes, we can infer that their previous meetings didn't go too well. During the number, their rivalry is pretty clear. Nina's verses are about how she'll surpass the diva any day now. She's catching up. And the diva's verses are about how Nina is dreaming if she thinks that she'll ever reach that level of fame. It's fun. It's very Gaga-esque, but did the choreographers have a stroke or something? There are these painfully awkward dance moves that I think are supposed to be badass or something, but all I can think about is that scene in Camp Rock 2. You know the one. It just makes me laugh. 11th song, Caught in the Storm by Basic and Paul.
I'm caught in the storm, I'm caught in the rain.
This one is from Jesse. He's singing about being caught in Amanda's world and still not really belonging there and being used by someone he loves. But again, he says all that in the vaguest terms possible. Like, yes, would I listen to this in pop radio? Absolutely. But this is not what the song is for. This is one of my points of contention with Dear Evan Hansen as well. This duo is really averse to adding situation-specific songs, which is why it feels like the plot has stopped dead in its tracks whenever a song starts. This is not how you're supposed to feel in a musical. You're supposed to anticipate the songs, not dread them. 13th song, The Goodbye Song by Joe Iconis.
I wish I could goodbye.
Another one by Notorious Criminal, Joe Iconis. In the scene before this one, Amanda is performing Broadway Here I Come on stage when the diva, presumably having had her career reach a low point, shoots her. And she D-words in Jesse's arms. This is this show's version of Don't Forget Me. It's Jesse singing about his grief, how he regrets that he won't be able to come with Amanda, and confusingly saying that he'll always be there for her regardless. Okay, how is she supposed to ask you for help, man? Do you regularly keep Ouija boards on your person? Anyway, the song is nice. It might just be slightly too cheerful for the situation. Like, I think it should be more wistful than hype, you know? Something like Road to Hell Part 2 in Hadestown. Not in terms of style, it wouldn't fit with this show at all, but in terms of general impression. Part 4. Production Hullabaloo. As I was researching this show, one of the first things I came across was its Wikipedia page. And a good chunk of that is production drama. And I can't verify that all of it is true, but if it is, it explains a lot about the show. Before we get into the drama, the entertainment president for Showtime, Robert Greenblatt, and Steven Spielberg were workshopping the idea for the show as early as 2009. The original concept was that the show was going to be about the production of fictional Broadway musicals, and if any of them proved stage-worthy, they would transfer them to Broadway. If 14-year-old Marina had heard about this, she would have gone insane. I wanted nothing more than to see the full version of Bombshell. I looked for like fan compilations of all of the Bombshell songs in order for like hours on end on YouTube, and I couldn't find one for the life of me. This has changed since 2012, but we'll get into that in a minute. First, let's talk about the production of Smash. January 2011. Greenblatt is made entertainment president at NBC, and he brings the Smash project into the network. They hire Theresa Rebeck as showrunner, and she writes the pilot script that is directed by Michael Meyer. And Steven Spielberg gets solidified as executive producer. At first, things were chill. The pilot got a warm critical reception, it generated some buzz, but then things started to spiral. This is reportedly because of Theresa Rebeck. In January 2013, an anonymous source who worked on the show told BuzzFeed this. Very quickly, it turned into a kind of like a kingdom or something, a dictatorship. Dun, dun, dun. So apparently she had never been in charge of a television show before. That's why they tasked David Marshall Grant with helping her, since he was an experienced writer. Besides David, she also had a full writing staff, but according to a BuzzFeed article, soon after production began, she decided she just wasn't interested in having a writer's room anymore. Like, seriously, check out this quote from her. Writer's rooms are really not my thing, because I can only stand being in a room with people so many hours a day. I feel like early drafts should be speedy because everyone changes their mind, so I spend a lot of time up front parsing sentences. New York Magazine, December 2011. Seems like it lines up with the BuzzFeed article. Just saying. And Grant couldn't regulate her interference because, according to BuzzFeed, she began to freeze him out. Another anonymous quote. I think Rebeck was worried that Grant was meant to be her replacement. He was largely shut out of a lot of the writing process, as were all of the writers, but didn't lose patience until the end of the season. And even then, he was discreet and professional about it. Huh. I think you can tell that whoever the sources for BuzzFeed were, they didn't like Theresa very much. Which is why I'm using words like allegedly and supposedly a lot. Anyway, the episodes written by Theresa right out the gate featured a lot of elements that people thought were a bad idea. For example, the dumb adoption storyline with Julia, that was an addition by Theresa. According to a lot of people, she was disproportionately invested in that storyline because it was a reflection of her own life. Leo and Alice also were bumped up to near main character status, which it was not previously anticipated. Spielberg and the network panicked seeing all the alterations, and a bunch of casting changes were suggested as a way to fix it. Pretty much everyone wanted to replace Alice except for Theresa, and Steven Spielberg wanted to replace Megan Hilty. Mr. Spielberg, meet me in the parking lot. Rebeck fought hard against this, which is something that the BuzzFeed writer approves of, and so do I. This is one of the reasons why I think she had to have had some sense of the strengths of Smash. Auditions were held to replace Leo, but he ended up staying. Why? Who okayed this? With this whole mess of recasting attempts, a lot of the janky elements of Rebeck's scripts ended up getting through. A lot of random musical numbers were shoehorned in, paper-thin storylines were fully shot, and Spielberg wasn't even informed of the conflicts between Theresa and Grant until the show was almost done. And Theresa has pushed back against this villainizing portrayal of her. In November 2012, she said this in an interview with The Observer. One of the points of contention last year was that the network thinks they have the right to say to the writer of the show, we don't want her to do this, we want her to do this. And I would sometimes say back to them, she would never do that. And they'd look at me like I was crazy. And I'd be like, nope, it's not crazy, it's just who the character is. You have to respect who the character is. There is this sort of sense that if you don't f**k with the muse, the muse will stand by you. And sounds kind of unhinged, doesn't it? Like, don't f**k with the muse is a very convenient excuse for not accepting any criticism. And also, in April 2013, she sent this very passive-aggressive email to that BuzzFeed writer. The images appear to have been taken down from the article somewhere between November 2016 and July 2017, but I was able to access it via Wayback Machine. And, well,
I have a thought for you. If in fact Theresa Rebeck was the problem with Smash, and the train wreck it became, wouldn't things have gotten better rather than drastically worse once she left? It has surely occurred to you that your unnamed source was not strictly telling you the truth, In any case, I would like to state that your version of events is so wildly untrue and also unauthenticated. I was surprised to see it is still on the BuzzFeed website. Might I propose that in the interest of fairness, you now take it down? If the interest of fairness is not too distant a memory for you.
Okay, let's dissect this. She is right that season 2 isn't much better than season 1. The critical reception wasn't better and the ratings dropped drastically. And I actually think that the fact that season 2 isn't as chaotic makes it boring. But it is more cohesive. It seems like it was written with a cohesive vision in mind, unlike the previous season. And also people might not have watched it because the last one was really bad. Theresa. And my sympathy for her runs dry near the last line. If the interest of fairness is not too distant a memory for you. Really? To an aside, I also disagree with her assessment that the article should be taken down at all. Like, we all clown on BuzzFeed for posting some dumb stuff, but they're a big company. I don't think they would allow Kate Arthur, who's the writer, to post the article if she couldn't verify that her sources did actually work on Smash. As to whether the sources were telling the truth or not, a lot of what they said was a matter of personal interpretation, so I don't think you could rightly call it lying. As for specific events mentioned, they might have made some stuff up and Theresa is rightly upset, or they might have been aware of things she wasn't. And she can't prove that this isn't the case because she admits later in their email exchange that she doesn't know who the sources were. And even if they did make some stuff up, I don't think the writer is to blame for this. Like, she did her due diligence. She got access to sources who worked in the original production, and she reached out to the people who were mentioned, Theresa included. She just declined to comment, even if she perceived the events as wildly untrue. To close this out, I don't have a great impression of her back, and based on her own quotes, I'm inclined to believe the informants. But she's right about one thing. The show didn't get better after she left. Some of the elements that people attributed to her were still present, such as the random pop covers, and several new bad elements were introduced. But that was it for a while. There were a couple live hit list concerts in 54 Below / Feinstein's in December 2013. How that got a live adaptation before Bombshell is beyond me, but anyway. In the live events, they added in a couple new songs and a lot of dialogue. Sung through my ass! Which made the show a lot more coherent. But look, it wasn't in the show, so I'm not counting it. I reviewed the musicals as they appeared in Smash. There was a one-night concert, a fundraiser for the Actors Fund in 2015, where the cast performed most of the songs from Bombshell. That concert was then taped, and it was broadcast in May 2020, also as a way to raise money for the Actors Fund, this time during the pandemic. And to my dismay, unlike f***ing Hit List, Bombshell didn't get a full book. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. Instead, they used Marilyn Monroe quotes as a way to make up the connective tissue between songs. But, like, jokes aside, it's honestly very fun to watch the cast and be in awe of the genuine, incredible talent that everyone has. And that was it. That was all we got. Or was it? Out of nowhere! May 2022, there was a first reading for Smash the Musical, followed by a week-long workshop. And then Mark Shingman said there were no concrete plans of it being brought to Broadway, but that he hoped it would premiere sooner rather than later. And then March 22nd, 2023, 3 weeks after I started working on this very video, they announced that Smash will be officially opening on 2024. The 25th Broadway season. Besties, I'm flabbergasted. What the hell is happening here? Is this what I have wanted for 11 freaking years? Well, not exactly. You will notice I said Smash the Musical, not Bombshell. And this concerns me. If you have been watching carefully this far, you will remember that this show was ridiculously convoluted, and I am at a loss as to how they would even adapt it at all. It would be so condensed that it would be basically unrecognizable. And also, why don't they just do Bombshell? Come on, we all want to see a fully staged version of it. One live performance is not enough. Why, Spielberg? Wasn't this what you wanted all along? I'm so upset. Part 5, Conclusion. And this all of this is Smash. And I'm at a loss as to what to even say here. Like, what else is there to say? Smash was a mess, but it was a very iconic mess. There were some genuinely incredible elements, like Ivy's storyline, some of the music, most of the choreography, the staging, the costuming, a dark-skinned gay black man as one of the main love interests. Sam was robbed. And that's why I think many people still have very fond memories of this show, myself included. As this became a little bit of a hyperfixation for me, I actually found a couple of like complete strangers who said, "Oh yeah, Smash, I love that." And I found out while researching that the Bombshell live concert tickets, they sold out in minutes, and that people in line to watch it were being offered thousands of dollars for their tickets. Now, does it hold up? Not really. Like, all the people I met who liked Smash hadn't actually watched it in 10 years. And it's truly a roller coaster ride. Like, there are some insufferable moments, but if you can get through them, the exhilarating moments hit all the harder for it. And if you're thinking about watching it, first of all, be warned. But second, watch season 1 and season 2 up until Ivy premieres on Bombshell. Unless you're like really invested in the Jimmy Karen romance, which I was not. Oh, and a quick side note, I didn't get to talk about it much, but I really like Jeremy Jordan as a singer. I just wish I didn't hate his character. I would love to watch a remake of this show, especially in the current landscape of introspective and artistic musicals. One that took full advantage of the drama and had a more organized and conscious script. If some miracle happened and anyone at NBC is watching this, by all means, do address the things that I have criticized here. But for the love of God, don't try to make this show unproblematic. Smash was at its best when it was being messy and problematic, and credit where credit is due, Theresa Rebeck knew that. Play into the mess, play into the drama, but just give us characters we can root for. We have Ivy, Tom, and Eileen, sure, but if you want us to relate to the other characters, you have to give them some humanity. Flaws, insecurities, tenderness. I think this show could be something really incredible, and ultimately, that's what keeps me coming back. The potential this has to be amazing. The cast still wants it, the fans are clearly here. Bring it back. But Christ, make a musical out of Bombshell, not the entire 20 hours of Smash. Marilyn Monroe is going through a massive period of reevaluation nowadays. There was never a better time for an introspective musical about her. Give me Bombshell! With Megan Hilty as the lead.
I stumbled around a bit while...
That was it, everyone. Pretty insane, huh? Thanks so much to the fan community for all the material you've created on this show. I couldn't have done it without you. And thanks to everyone who watched this second monstrosity I've created. Like and subscribe, share it if you love it. It's my dream to make this an actual job. Take care, everyone. Bye.
We won't flop on our way to the top, 'cause there's one damn thing we've learned. I give him that big finish, and they'll forget what came before. Just give him that big finish, but always keep an eye on the door. So I give this lesson to you, my friend. Forgive and forget if you're good in the end. Just give him that